Good to go? She says that looks so unprofessional.
It does.
Anyway, welcome. Bible 101. We are going through the Bible, and we are now at Chronicles. Okay, you can see these are the historical books of the Bible, and we're on Chronicles. We're going to do both Chronicles, Book 1 and Book 2, today. That's only, I think, 62 chapters. So hang on. No, it's not. So what we have is, you can see what Chronicles is. It's kind of a rehash of all the stuff going all the way back to Joseph and to Jacob when Israel became a nation. Okay, so Jacob was the father of 12 sons, and those became the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, so the Chronicles goes all the way back to that. And the reason why is because Ezra, you see, Ezra is believed to be the writer of Chronicles. So you can see Ezra and Nehemiah are the two next books. Ezra and Nehemiah are actually one book, just same as Chronicle is one book. But over time, they split them into two books. And Ezra and Nehemiah tells the story of the rebuilding of the temple and the rebuilding of the nation of Israel after the Babylonian captivity. You remember in 2 Kings, we got to the point where everybody was hauled off and there was just a remnant of the nation of Israel in Israel, in Judah and in Jerusalem. So now King Cyrus is going to become the king of the Persians or the Assyrians. He takes over the Syrians and the Babylonians, and he makes a decree that he's letting all the people come back and rebuild their temple. And that's where we are in Chronicles. In Nehemiah and Ezra. That's their story. So what happens is we need to educate the people that are coming back. We need to remind them of their history. Remind them who we are as a people. And so they call him the chronicler. Okay, that's the person that wrote Chronicles. He goes back and he writes everything from the beginning, actually. So he basically retells the story of Israel from the very beginning. And they needed their history. They needed to know who they were. They were in captivity for all those years, and now they come back and they developed other ways. And so they needed that. Many of the books that he references a lot of the books that are already there, and some of the ones that we haven't gone over yet, like Lamentations, Jeremiah and Ezekiel, Jeremiah and Zechariah. Those are prophets, and we'll get into those a little bit later. Lamentations is a book of the wisdom, and it's a kind of a set. It'll go with Proverbs and Psalms, and we'll look at those a little later. But, and of course, Isaiah, we talked a little bit about Isaiah and Kings. He was just popped up as a prophet. Okay, so, funny thing about Isaiah is there's first Isaiah, second Isaiah, and third Isaiah. Mainly because if you look at the time period that Isaiah was prophet, he would have been 900 years old. So there was probably a group of people that called themselves Isaiah, and they just passed it on down through time. But anyway, so that's Isaiah. He borrowed from that. He also borrows from what is called the Annals of David. In other words, stories of David. We don't know where that book is anymore, but and then the book of Kings, the Kings of Israel. He borrows from that book too. And once again, we don't know what that book is. It was actually mentioned in in Kings. It was also mentioned there. Annals of the Kings, it said. So there's other writings that we don't have now that he pulls from. So okay, so Chronicles. Chronicles is one of those. Who was it? Arabian Nights. Scheherazade. They taught Scheherazade. What was the first thing you had to do? You had to get their attention within the first so many minutes. If you don't, in telling a story, you lost them. Well, guess what? They start out the first 9 chapters of Chronicles, and it's genealogies. Boring, boring stuff. I mean, there's a reason for it, but to start a story out like that, it's like, and I think a lot of people, when you're reading through the Bible, you get to this, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this and this and this and this. This person was the father of this person, and it gets kind of tedious. I actually listened to all of Chronicles yesterday, and let's just say I can listen to it and I can speed it up. I was on 3 times normal speaking speed, so I can barely understand them just to get through this part. So the first part is all about the genealogies. The rest of it is the reign of King David. And of course, to start the reign of King David, we go right to where? The death of Saul. And we remember the death of Saul. He actually committed suicide. He stabbed himself, fell on his own sword because his servant wouldn't do it for him. And he died. And then David becomes king. So that's where we start. 11 and 12, David captures Israel, or Jerusalem. Same story, no difference than before. Just tells the story of when he captured. So all these are the same stories. There's a little bit of difference, and what the chronicler does, he kind of cleans up the nastiness. It makes the characters look more likable. And so some of the nasty things that they do, and they're like, wow, they're real people. I could see myself doing that, or it kind of cleans them up. So now David, instead of being this guy that started out great, and then he's like, oh man, his morals started to go downhill. It kind of cleans that stuff up, and that's what the chronicler does. But you remember what the purpose of this is. It's to give the people of Israel an identity again, because they're coming back. So we have to make our heroes look even more heroic and less like real people. So, the Ark is returned. We know that. David's kingdom is established. He's the king over the north and the south, Israel and Judah. God's promise to David's heir. These are the chapters. Chapter 17, God's promise. Remember, God said that David's heir will always sit on the throne of Judah. Okay? And that happened even during the captivity. And now they come back, and the promise is still there. Okay? So that, David's conquest, the Philistines and all the different battles that he's done. That's 2 chapters of that. Then David does a census. He's supposed to go out to battle, and he takes a census because he wants to see how many fighting men he has. So he's going to play the odds. If I don't have enough fighting men, I'm not going to go to war. But this is actually David's downfall. It's not played up so much in Chronicles as it is in Kings, because he's disobedient to God, and he has to make sure that he has the strength, and God just told him to do it. Go to battle, and he wants to make sure he has enough people. So that's kind of David's downfall when he takes the census. Then he wants to build God a temple. Now, I might have mentioned this before. When I was in Bible college, up in up in Kentucky. We were going through the Old Testament, and as a survey, kind of like we're doing now, and the professor pointed this out. If David was man after God's own heart, why wouldn't God allow him to build a temple? Because God doesn't allow him to build the temple. He says, no, you're not going to build my temple. So, why is that? Come on, you've seen the stories in Kings. David is a violent man. He's killed lots of people. And then they kill people because they're related to people that might be against him. I mean, he is a very violent man. And now he wants to build a temple. So that's what I said. I said, how could God want such a violent person to build a temple, even though he was doing it for God? But still, God doesn't allow him to build the temple, but he still makes preparations. He makes preparations for the temple, and then he organizes the temple servants. So he's got guards and people that will be doing the offerings and all the different organizational structure of the temple is set up, even though he's never built a temple. So, and then the administrative, who's going to oversee all the sacrifices, who's going to do this and who's going to do that. That's another part that David prepares, even though he hasn't built the temple. And then at the end, he plans on who's going to succeed him, and that is going to be Solomon. Solomon, because Absalom gets killed, and then his brother goes and kills his other brother. So, kill. Sounds like what we used to march to in the military. Everybody kill everybody, and we'll all be happy and sing songs.
Thank you for your service.
So that's First Chronicles. Ends with David. So who's our next hero of the Old Testament that we want to make sure everybody knows about?
Solomon. Wisdom.
The second Chronicle starts out with the reign of Solomon. Who was David's heir? Solomon. And why Solomon? Because Solomon had such a great temple. He built this beautiful temple. People were coming from miles around. Countries were coming just to see the splendid that he built. This palace that he built. Remember the palace? Took double the time that it took to build the temple. And Queen of Sheba comes and sees David to find out if he's as rich and as wise as everybody's saying. So, Second Chronicles starts out with the gift. You remember? God told Solomon he could give him a gift and choose wisely, or choose your gift, and he chose to be wise so that he could rule the kingdom. And so that's his gift. And he chose wisely because he chose to something that would help the people. And that's what God wanted from him. And so he blessed him with other riches. Riches in wealth and riches in wives. And interesting. Now, I'm going into Wednesday's Bible study. But the idea of wives in this culture, wives was just more property. So when you talk about riches and wives, you can just put them in with that. Because women were not valued as people. They were valued as property in this time. And so God blessed him with riches, blessed him with wisdom, and blessed him with wives. So the joke is he had 300 wives, 700 concubines. So when he walks down the corridor of the palace, he sees one of his wives or concubines. He can look at her and goes, "You're 1 in 1,000, girl,"
Because she really was.
because she really was 1 in 1,000. I keep my day job. Anyway, so 2 through 7 is Solomon. He builds the temple for God. Okay, and then in 8 and 9 we have his activities, the things that he did, showing him how wise he was. Remember the story of the baby? 2 women were fighting over the baby. He says, "Hold the baby up, I'll slice it in 2, and each of you get a half." And the one woman says, "No, no, no, it's her baby, let her have it." And he says, "Take it and give it to that woman, because she would rather not see her baby die than to have her baby." So that wisdom, even if it wasn't her baby, it should have been her baby. And so that shows his wisdom. That's part of his activities, and talks about his splendor. In other words, the beauty of Israel under Solomon. But the thing about that is, there's a lot of taxation going on so that he can build these temples. So there's a lot of, but we don't see that in Chronicles. We don't see that in Chronicles. Remember, he's trying to make them out to be heroes more than anything else. So, and then we have Solomon's death, of course. And then after Solomon's death, we start with this big list of bad kings. So we go through all the kings. Now, the Chronicles does not do the kings of Israel, just the kings of Judah. Interesting. Now, here's something to remember. When Israel was carried off to captivity, they were carried off before Judah. Okay? Years and years before Judah. And what happened when they were carried off, the king of Assyria, was it Assyria or Babylon? It was Assyria. Went and repopulated the area from other peoples that he's conquered. And so he took them and displaced them and put them there, just to control them, because now they're in a land they don't really know. And so when the captivity is over and they're coming back to their land, they have all these people that aren't Israelites. They're not Jews. And that's the Samaritans, right? Why did they hate the Samaritans? Because they intermingled with these people that are populated when they come back. So they didn't even consider them a part of the nation of Israel. And so they only went with the Jewish, or the kings of Judah in the book of Chronicles. And that, of course, is where the temple is in Jerusalem. It's right in the middle of Judah. So we have this we went from being big like this is Israel, and this is Judah, but we're all together Israel. And then when they come back from captivity, it's like this is Israel, and we're just Judah, basically. And so we need to just focus on the kings of Judah to remind the people these are our real kings. Those other kings to the north, their people aren't even really our people. So that's that. And then we get to 36. In 36, we see the fall of Jerusalem, the fall of the Judah, how they're carried off to Babylon, and they are they sets up a puppet government in Jerusalem. In other words, he handpicks who's going to be the king. And even though it is a relative, an heir of David, it's still handpicked and controlled by the Babylonians during captivity. So that's that. And the very last part of Chronicles is the part where King Cyrus, king of Persia, he basically conquers all that area. The Assyrians were first, the Babylonians, and then the Persians took over. And King Xerxes is over there, and he comes and he goes all the way over to where Alexander came from, Macedonia. So he basically fights his way all over there. But anyway, it says King Cyrus in the Bible, probably the same one, King Xerxes or King Xerxes II. Anyway, I think that's right. Anyway, he makes a decree that the people can go back to their home and build their temple and worship their God. And so, yay for King Cyrus, and we all going home. But when we get there, we have to remind everybody who we really are. And so, the Chronicles. And that's going to be Nehemiah, Ezra and Nehemiah are going to be the main characters in the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the rebuilding of the temple, and the rebuilding of the nation of Israel. Okay, good. Questions? Yes?
I have a question. The mentality of these kings, has there ever been any study where they've gone back and said nobody normal could do that type of behavior, chop, chop, slice, slice? Has there ever been analysis where, yes, they were a leader, Putin, if they were a leader, and be so psychotic, immune to death, there's something wrong with the picture.
Yeah.
But they were leaders.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. You question when, God said to do this. Really? Or was this your justification for doing this? And so it's like, but that's no. I mean, we think of it today when we see someone over in that area getting, they chop their head off or something. You're like, oh my gosh, how could they do something like that? That's normal practice back then. It's. I mean, I don't want to say normal practice. Everybody just didn't go around cutting people's heads off. But when you're fighting against each other, that's something that.
Precisely, it may not have been the leader himself, but his workers, his army, his staff.
And it's all to send a message. It's all to say, look, this is your most powerful warrior. Look what we did to him. Here's his head. This is what we can do to you. It's trying to send a message. We're more powerful than you. Dagon, this is going back quite a bit. This is going back to Judges. But Dagon, when they take the ark and they put it in the temple with Dagon, the Philistines' god, the first time he's bowed down, their statues bowed down on his face in front of the Ark of the Covenant, symbolizing that he bowed down to the God of Israel. So they set it up and they did it again. And the next day he falls down and his hands are cut off and his head is cut off. And this is a statue. And nobody knows because they shut the temple up. But the idea is our God is more powerful than your God because look, you took your hands, you don't have any hands anymore, you lost his head. So you can see that that's the mentality of the culture of that time. So, yeah. Any other questions? That was a good question.
Is there nationalities and all these people that are doing these different things? Are there different nationalities at that time before the Jews went off?
Yeah, yeah.
There were different nationalities.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I was trying all the way. What I did was compare our history with the Bible. And like he came over and settled and they did this and did that. And they, well, that's what this is starting before the Bible and everything. And as the Bible is being built and everything, just like our country was built.
Yeah.
And different things. And I was wondering if there was different nationalities in this, because besides the Jews were separate.
One of the things that we didn't really go into it in Chronicles, because I'm trying to do a survey, not to go into too deep. But in Kings, there's a part that says that Israel defeated this king at this battle. However, they found a big one of those obelisks, those big pillars, and on it said that king had defeated the Israelites at that battle. And so you can see it's like, well, and then if you look at it, there's no city of Israel there anymore. You probably deduce that they didn't really win that battle. They just kind of puffing themselves up. But yes, the way I try to look at it is, this is the world. Okay? This is all the history of the world. This is my drawing because I don't have my blackboard. So this is the world. This is all the history. This is everything. All the different nationalities. Everybody around the world. Okay? And this is the Bible. This is the Old Testament. It's just about the Jewish nation. It's talking about their dealings with God. Okay? At the same time this is going on, God is still working in other countries and other nations and other peoples. There's several times in the Bible we hear about Melchizedek. Who the heck is Melchizedek? Just out of nowhere. He is the king and the prophet of Salem. What? And he blesses Abraham. Wait a minute, I thought Abraham was God's man. How do we get somebody that we never heard of? Not because we're just focused on this one story, this one line. And so there are things going on around. Another one is Moses' father-in-law is said to be the prophet of Midian. And it's talking about, is he talking about prophet of God, or is he talking about, well, it doesn't really say. So you get the picture that he's worshiping God, but not through the nation of Israel. So he's outside of that little road that we're taking. This is the history that we're taking. And where's this history going to lead us to eventually? To the Christ. And so, for us as Christians to understand the things that Jesus talks about, it's important to at least have a general understanding of this road that has taken to get there. Because a lot of the things that Jesus says comes out of this history. So, yes, to answer your question, yes, there is a lot of other things going on, other nations and peoples.
Yes, because when you start saying these things, all these people come from here and these people come from here. Would that be a different nationality or what?
Yeah. Philistines, Aram,
Romans?
what's that?
Romans?
Yeah, the Romans are over there, the Babylonians, the Syrians. Anyway, so that's, there are many other people besides just what's in the Bible. Any other questions?
Very good.
That'll do it for this week.
All right. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to us.
Amen.